So everyone's been talking about the girl on TikTok who fell in love with her psychiatrist, and it's been blowing up in a big bad way. And this is what we're going to be reacting to today. Now, I was going to do a video about the kind of conversation that was happening in leftist spaces online and stuff like that, but I feel like that conversation is kind of over with for right now. And I feel like anything I could add to it, other people have already said, who've already had bigger platforms and have said it way better than I could. So we're just gonna do something fun. We're just gonna kind of do something fun and watch this thing that's been drawing a lot of people's attention. And at first, I didn't know if I wanted to, because I saw someone in the midst of this who made a video about the whole situation, being like, people just shouldn't even be reacting to this because it draws more attention to the person. But here's the thing, with me, I feel like I have no problem doing that because I don't feel like my content on the issue is going to draw any more eyes than people who aren't already aware of this. So I'm not exactly worried about how I'm going to impact this. So we might as well have some fun. Now from what I saw, this series has gone up to 25 parts. I don't know how many of those actually pertain to the actual issue, the actual story. We're just gonna try to do the first 10 parts though. So let's see. So this is the first video she posted.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew, and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years. Here it is, part 1. So I decided to go back on ADHD meds after many years of being off of them. I was on them in my early 20s to help me get through college, and then I went off of them because they just weren't, the side effects were too much over the benefits. But then in my late 20s, I read this book, Taking Charge of Adult ADHD, and it absolutely changed my life. For my fellow ADHDers, there's so many good things in here. And the biggest thing that I took away was that it's very important for ADHDers to be on meds. So I decided to make an appointment with a psychiatrist. I just Googled psychiatry in the city that I lived in, and I went with the first one that came up, and I got an appointment within a month. And then I booked a 90-minute intake, and I show up to the intake, and this man is my age, and I can't help but notice that he's pretty attractive, this psychiatrist.
Okay. So first things first, I mean, nothing she said here so far has been problematic, but I feel like when people tell a story, they add in way too much background information when they don't need to. I feel like for the first part of this whole premise of oh, I fell in love with my psychiatrist and all this stuff, nothing we gained here is important. That's just what I'm taking from this first part. I'm just okay, who fucking cares? Get to the juice of the story.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he kept me anyway, part 2. So in this intake, I kind of clocked that he was attractive in my age, but when I tell you that I've had a lot of couch time in my life, a lot of therapy, I just went right into it. I trusted him enough, of course, why wouldn't I, to tell him about my childhood trauma, my daddy issues, if you will, what I had went through, all of the relationship trauma that I had. I was 6 months sober at this time, but all of the drinking and substance use I used to do, and he just listened and nodded. And that's the thing about psychiatrists, is that they're good at pretending to listen. They can appear connected, but that doesn't mean that they're always.
Or maybe because they hear similar stories every single day, they're not this is normal for them, so they're not gonna react the way you would tell this to a normal person. That's the thing too, is that I have seen some parts of this. I watched Hassan reacting to it, and I also watched Saros TV's video about it. but I wasn't really listening. I had like, it was like background noise. So I know, but I am familiar with some parts of this, and a lot of her like coverage, like her retelling this story, it's very almost anti-mental health in a disgusting way. Like you can kind of tell when she's like talking about this experience. Like, here's the thing, not everyone is going to have good stories involving like therapists or psychiatrists for very good reasons. There's are people out there who shouldn't be therapists, who shouldn't be psychiatrists because they use their positions to manipulate people. Do not get me wrong, just ask like, I mean, ask like minorities, or and especially black women who have like dealt with therapy. It is not that great for them. And not, maybe not even through a manipulating sense, just like in a sense of like the person who is like treating them or listening to them just doesn't understand their experience and might misdiagnose them, shit like that. But like, this isn't what this is. She is just like over analyzing someone whose job it is to kind of listen to people's, you know, mental struggles and try to piece together, you know, what to give them. That's what a psychiatrist is. There's someone who like listens to like, you know, the symptoms, you know, like they they're essentially there to just like give you the medicine and shit like that for the stuff you need to treat. Like, they hear a lot of this stuff, especially when she said earlier that this was the first person that came up when she was searching psychiatrists in her area. Probably someone who gets a lot of business then, if he's like the top result. You know, so he's probably, you know, heard a lot of this stuff before, or on some degree. So he's just kind of used to it. So he's just like, okay, I'm listening to what this person is saying so I can like diagnose them and then I can give them the treatment that they need. But she's taking it as like oh, he wasn't paying attention.
Always connected. So I just felt really seen. And I also told him, I was like, look, I don't want to be on stimulant meds. So he listened to me and he put me on the non-stimulant ADHD med at the lowest dose just to figure out if it was going to work for me. I fell in love with my psychiatrist.
Okay, I should probably turn auto scroll off. Okay, so like, yeah.
And he kept me anyway, part 3. So I hadn't ever seen a psychiatrist before. When I was on meds in my early 20s, I only got meds from my primary care physician. So I didn't understand how psychiatry works. So because he was figuring out my med dose, I saw him every month, and he just made me feel like I was his friend. He was really, really funny and cracked jokes and told me he was impressed with my running that I would do. And yeah, so of course I loved the attention that I got from him. And it was in...
Like, this is kind of funny when you think about this all being a story where she's trying to paint this guy as someone who manipulated her into falling in love with her. Into her falling in love with him. But like, he's just being cordial. He's just being nice. Like, I've been to like the doctors and shit like that, and they'll like compliment my shirt. They'll compliment something about me, and I've had that happen to other people as well. I remember like the last trip I went to the doctors, it was because I needed to take a hearing test for the place I worked for, and they commented my signature. Like, apparently my signature was distinct enough that they were just like, wow, that's very impressive. But it's like, they're just being nice, they're just being cordial, and that's it. Like, especially a place that is meant to like try to make you feel better, it's gonna try to make you feel better in both physically and mentally, so they're gonna try to be nice to you.
In my 3rd session with him, because at this point we were all on Zoom, that I asked him, I said, hey, do you mind if I call you by your first name? And he's Pakistani, so I said his first name wrong. And he said, well, it's pronounced this, but yes, of course you can. And he seemed so smug and happy with himself. And
You're the one who asked if you could call him by his first name. And she's trying to act like this is like a 3D chess move that he did. Like, here's the thing. Yes, people in these sort of positions can be manipulative at times, all right? But like, this is the thing that you will notice as we get through this story more and more, is that like she there is obvious points that she could paint this situation to be worse than what it was, but like with the information that is presented to us, he does nothing wrong. Like, that's the thing. Like, she could painted it, she could have like maybe twisted or lied and said like, oh, he told me or asked me to call him by his first name. But no, you're the one who's asking. He's just being nice.
Know that is because that was his first sign that him pretending like we're friends was working. And to be fair to me, I had only ever been to therapy before. I didn't realize that, it's important to call your doctor last name. I mean, I did know that. I did it with all my other doctors, but it just showed that the boundaries were blurring. And
he's just being nice. Again, he didn't initiate any of this so far. None of this stuff has been initiated by him. This is her initiating everything and being like, well, it's his fault. It's like, no, he's just being nice. That's it. Like,
liked that. So from then on, from my third session on, I started calling him his first name. And then he just started turning up the volume on us being friendly. And he would ask me, for the first 6 sessions, he asked me after the meds, he said, how's your bowels, bladder, and appetite? And
so hot. That's so hot. Can you see he was being manipulated? He was a health expert who was asking me about my health. He's being manipulative.
And then he would ask me any thoughts of harm. And apparently that's pretty common for psychiatry to ask those questions. And then on our 6th session, when things were really, the chemistry was starting to be there before, like, I didn't realize it. I was like, oh, this man's just friendly. And
sure.
he said, I have to ask this because it's a special interest of mine, but is there any thoughts of harm? Like, I was special to him.
It's special to him because he's a psychiatrist. It's special to him because he is a fucking psychiatrist. You even realized when you said it earlier that this is something that psychiatrists are meant to ask. The reason why he is saying why it's special for him is because this is the stuff that he deals with. This is something that he specializes in. Oh my god.
And I said, no thoughts.
Also, you might be noticing she turned off the comments for all these parts, all these posts. So like, that's the problem here too, is that like, on one level I understand, because I feel like a lot of people will take, this whole, I don't know if it's a controversy, this like, trend is not the right word for it either, but like this whole thing of like her posting her way through this is that there are people who are like in the comments, and I would say now here's the thing, I have not seen the comments before she started turning them off, so I cannot say for sure what they looked like. I can imagine though there was a fair amount of them that were trying to help her out by being like, hey, you're misreading this this whole thing that happened between you and your psychiatrist, like you might want to like figure this out before you go posting about this on social media and maybe even get him doxxed. Because like, if people are able to find out where she lives and they are able to find a Pakistani psychiatrist in her area, they will know who this guy is. But also I can see, on some level I can understand seeing like why comments are turned off, in the sake of like, I do think there are some people who are going like at her throat just because she is a woman online who is clearly in the wrong. So there is a lot of like misogyny attached to this that makes a lot of these comments a lot harsher. Again, I don't know what they looked like, but from what I was told, a lot of the comments were just people trying to correct her for the wrong stuff that she was saying, and she just wasn't hearing it. So she turned off the comments. But I can imagine there was also a lot of nasty ones in there as well. But at the same time, I feel like that doesn't make up for the fact that you're very much trying to silence people who are just trying to give you some help and make you realize that you're in the wrong.
So I was seeing him every month, and just gaining more and more respect for him, because he would just tell me these little things about his successes and all of the cool things that he was doing in his life. And it made me fall for him, honestly. And he was really good at listening. And I mean, he's a Pisces, right? So of course he's going to be there and be able to go deep with my feelings.
This explains so much. I'm kidding. I know not all astrology girls are crazy. I'm just saying it kind of fits the bill here. Like, I don't really care if someone is into astrology. To me, I do think it is a little weird, but like, I feel like this matches up with a lot of her attitude here, where it's just like you're basing this basically off of nothing and just not really understanding like the normal way that people communicate with one another. So I feel like when you're just like trying to boil someone's personality down to like a simple phrase or word of being like, oh, well, you're this, it kind of explains a lot why you probably not understand. This is not me saying that everyone who follows astrology is like this, all right? I'm just saying I feel like it makes sense that she is an astrology girl.
But that doesn't mean that he wasn't extracting from them. Anyway, so I would beg him to let me see him every week. Beg him, because my therapist at the time, he was fine. You know, he wasn't a predator, but he was fine. He just wasn't.
Is she calling her psychiatrist a predator? Because like that's what she implies there by saying the therapist wasn't. Like literally no information that she has given us like even implies a little bit that he's like predatory. So I feel like that's a pretty bold claim to just throw out there.
Doing very much for me. And so that therapist retired and I got a new therapist. And this new therapist, who is a 75-year-old woman with a PhD, she was pretty helpful. So I stopped asking my psychiatrist, begging, honestly, to be my therapist and let me see him more, right? Which also should have been a red flag. But then I started focusing on this therapist. However, I would tell the therapist how obsessed I was with my psychiatrist, and she didn't do anything about it. She just was interested. She also loved stories about my dating life, and
again, this goes back to the whole thing of like this entire series so far. It just feels like it's very like anti-mental health help, like seeking out therapy or seeking out like psychiatry and shit like that. It feels very much that, because like here's the thing, if you were telling her, you know, all of this about the psychiatrist and she didn't say stop seeing him, then yeah, that's a red flag. But like what she says after that is stuff that every therapist is going to be interested in, because like they're interested in like what makes up your life and makes up like the person that you are, so they can like try to help you with your problems. So like, yeah, like trying to squeeze in like, oh, she was interested in my dating life and this and that after following something that is a red flag, it just feels very like, it feels like she is just trying to like make this person seem like a bad therapist for doing their job.
Yeah, she also was getting supply from me in her own way, but that's for another part. So yeah, so I got a new therapist who actually helped me. She taught me CBT, EFT, all of these different modalities. And so I went back to just being okay with seeing once a month.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm probably gonna bleep that out and probably try to black it out. She just said his fucking name. Are you stupid? Like, yeah, if you have a problem with this person, like, and you want to like spill out your, oh my god, like, oh my. She just said his name. I'm gonna have to, just because like, even though I said earlier that like, I don't think, you know, me making a video about this is gonna gain much traction, I'm not gonna help spread this woman's like doxing of this guy. I feel like this is super irresponsible.
while he was giving me these little breadcrumbs of,
Like, I can understand maybe like calling someone out on social media if they like did you wrong on a date, if they were like, maybe not like only to the extreme degrees though, like if they did something terrible, like if they were just like annoying or whatever, like that's the thing. But like literally nothing about this series is worth essentially just doxing him.
making me feel special, telling me about his professional achievements, telling me about how he's getting international recognition.
He's letting me know that he's qualified for his position. What a monster.
And it worked. I was really impressed.
Also,
I
I
was
guarantee
seeing him.
that was mostly because she asked him about it. Let's be honest with ourselves. Or again, it could just be him being like, "Hey, just so you know, I'm meant to do this stuff. Like I have credentials that, show that I'm good at this." I don't know. Like I feel like that doesn't just come. I don't know. There's also something about this that's kind of gives me the ick a little bit on her part, and that is that like she intentionally brought up in a previous part that the psychiatrist is Pakistani. So there is a part about this where it definitely feels like, I don't know what the term for it is, but I guess you could call it like white woman tears, where it's like, because like, yes, obviously women have it worse than men in our current society, but sometimes there are cases where, I mean, it's like the Emmett Till thing. Now, I'm not saying this is like the Emmett Till thing because that literally resulted in his death, but it's very much like a white woman misinterpreting a situation that could lead to the harassment of a minority man, like a man who is a part of a minority, especially in a country that is already very Islamophobic to begin with. It's probably not the best thing to like bring up the fact that this guy is Pakistani or even say his fucking name.
I got a new therapist. I stopped begging my psychiatrist to see me weekly. And that is when the intermittent reinforcement started. Some sessions he'd be warm and kind and wonderful and let me in on little parts of his life and like be vulnerable with me or pretend. Other sessions, he would be cold and clinical and detached. And you know what that did? It made me work harder.
Or maybe he is a complex human being who has good and bad days, so, Like, that's the thing too. I feel like with a lot of these situations where she brings him up, she is pretty vague about like how he acts or like how these conversations come into play, at least on his part. That it's like, how are we supposed to get out of these interactions that he's supposed to be manipulative and controlling? When a lot of this is just like what normal people go through. Like, yeah, if I go to work and I'm talking to like a coworker or my boss, some days they'll be cordial with me, some days they'll be nice, but other days, if they're having bad days, they're going to be a little colder, they're going to be a little more distant. Like, this is just how you interact with people. Some people just don't have good days.
In our next sessions, it did. And it started the addiction that I had to him. 100%. And he knew exactly what he was doing. This man gives lectures on trauma and attachment theory. He used his psychiatric training to manipulate me.
Again, I feel like this is just a further case. Like, you're giving away information that could lead to the doxing of this man, but also at the same time, like, are there parts of this where you could see it through the psychiatrist's eyes of being like, maybe this is where she should have stopped? But at the same time, again, she's shown even through these just a couple of few parts that she is not a reliable narrator. So at the same time, it's just like we can't really get a full glimpse of like when this should have like stopped or whatever, or like what really happened, because obviously she's not that reliable to fall back on when it comes to the narrative of this.
And get me hooked. And guess what? It worked. In January of 2024, I was hit by a car turning left as I was going through a green light. And it was the night before my next appointment with my psychiatrist. So I was like, okay, You know, I'll still be able to go to my appointment on Zoom. I'm okay.
I remember this
But I
part.
did make an appointment with an urgent care the next day just to get checked out. I had bruising on my abdomen and a perforated eardrum. And the provider at the urgent care said, I do not feel comfortable treating you. You need to seek emergency care now. You may be internally bleeding. But it was 11 o'clock in the morning, and my appointment with my psychiatrist was at 2. So
Look, there are definitely situations in which people can be manipulated into caring about somebody else and how they're perceived by that person over their physical health and mental health, obviously. But I feel like this kind of like, I feel like everyone has that like line though. I feel like everyone has that line, and I feel like, hey, if you don't do this thing, instead of like going to this person that you're like obsessed with, you could die at some point. I don't, that is kind of victim blaming in a sense, but at the same time, like, at least with what we're presented in this story, there is nothing to indicate that this guy is manipulating her. It clearly indicates that she's just not well. That's the thing. And like, I don't want this to come off mean. I don't want this to come off mean-spirited or cruel. She said, I believe in like the first part or the second part, whichever part, that she has had a lot of like couch time. She's been like, you know, in mental health services a lot. Just because you have been through a lot of like mental health services, like therapy and stuff like that, it does not mean that you fully understand a lot of situations. Like, it's different for everyone, and she definitely needs more, because I feel like, again, I am not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist, you know, I'm not any of the stuff, but from my opinion, which should be taken very, very lightly, because I am just a YouTuber, this feels like somebody who doesn't realize that, like, I don't, this, and it's just not just her, but like, I feel like a lot of people who go to therapy or, you know, seek out mental health services sometimes aren't, like, I feel like if you go to these things, you have to realize there has to be a part of your brain that realizes that when you go to therapy and stuff like that, that there is a potential that you are in the wrong when it comes to the stuff going around you, or that you might not have been the best person. Like, therapy is not just you telling a therapist all this stuff that has happened to you and them just being like, oh, you special little person, it's gonna be okay. Like, it's not that. It's just like, okay, this happened, well, like, let's see how that affected you, let's see how we get there, let's see how you could have also dealt with things differently. And this is not me saying like, oh, this is like victim blaming or stuff like that. There's really obvious stuff that happens to people that's out of their control, but sometimes stuff happens to us because of what we do and we don't realize that. And I feel like this is a situation where like her delusions created this entire experience where she's the victim of this man's manipulations, at least from what we're presented so far. And instead of maybe seeking help or realizing that while she has gone through stuff because of this, at the end of the day, it's her thought process that got her to this place and not this man that she thinks is controlling her life. This is what it results in. And again, she could be in the right, but from what we're being presented, that's not the case. And the way she is handling this is very irresponsible.
I decided that I was going to wait so I could see my psychiatrist and not have to reschedule, because I was looking forward to my appointment with him so much. I look back at that time and I'm just like, oh my God, I put my own life under seeing him. I was fully addicted to him at this point. And you know what happened is that I showed up and I told him that I may be internally bleeding, and he didn't stop the appointment. He didn't say, you need to take care of yourself, go get emergency care now. He let me continue and just tell him about how much I loved him and how grateful I was for him, because that was really what most of our appointments were, is me just like pouring myself out, because he was so good at the intermittent reinforcement. Yeah, I got some warmth from him that appointment. So that was January 2023. And
Okay, I mean, the dates are kind of wrong, but she might just be mixing it up a bit. But like, again, I feel like there's a tough, again, I do believe we should believe all women when they first come out with their stories, but like, again, with what we're being presented, I feel like this is like her kind of overestimating exactly what went down. Or I don't know, like, if she told him that she was internally bleeding, I don't know really what to say to that. And especially if it was like, oh, she's pouring her heart out to him. Again, I don't really know. Like, yeah, in that case, he should have like stepped in and been like, okay, we're done, go to emergency care. But again, I feel like we've already shown that like she's not the most reliable narrator, so I feel like a lot of this stuff is just kind of her like oversimplifying what she said. But again, I do want to give her some leeway, but again, I feel like the way that she has gone about this, how unreliable a lot of the stuff that she has said is currently, it doesn't paint her in the best of light, so it's unfortunate.
After I risked my life to see him, that's when he really started turning up the intimacy in our appointments. However, he was really smart. The professional lines like the back of his hand. So he would comment on my appearance, but not compliment my appearance.
Oh no. So we're getting back to the whole like, oh, this is just what like normal people do.
Would come on screen and he would say, oh, you curled your hair. Or I would come on screen and he would say, oh, you're wearing glasses. And of course I felt seen. And
yeah, if you're used to seeing a person and they change their appearance somewhat, you're probably going to comment on that.
Excited that he was noticing these things about me. I didn't realize at this time that he had feelings for me too. I thought I was holding them all by myself. So I was so excited when he noticed.
So you thought he had feelings for you because he noticed that you were wearing glasses one time?
Noticed my glasses, that I ran and showed him my other pair, and he said, I prefer turtle shell glasses. So even though I usually wear contacts, I'm wearing these turtle shell glasses in these videos because just in case he sees them ever, he'll see me in his favorite glasses. He did tell me he likes the.
I'm sorry, I can't take this whole thing seriously when it's just like she's wearing the glasses throughout these series of videos in order to be like, oh, well, these were his favorites. Like, I really hope for the best for her in the future and that she can figure out what resulted in this. I am hoping for the best, but like, you're not doing yourselves any favor. You're not doing yourself a favor by posting this. Like, this is something that you should have just left off the internet and have left to your like therapist, or or maybe even find a new one or something like that. But like, instead, like, this isn't gonna do her any favors because she gives off the vibe of like but I don't want to say like unstable or stuff like that because I feel like I don't know. It's just, I don't understand why she thought this was going to be a good look.
The turtle shell. Anyway, it was just inappropriate things like that. Little
inappropriate. Like, it would have been one thing if he was like talking about her, like, you know, her chest or her other like, you know, features or something like that. But it's just like, no, it's your hair and your glasses, and he thought they were neat. Or like she said, he didn't even compliment them, he just noticed, and that's inappropriate. That's just like common courtesy of just being like, oh hey, you changed your hair. I'm used to you having straight hair, but you curled it. I noticed that. That's inappropriate now.
He let me in. And all this time, my best friend is an emergency medicine physician. And she told me, she said, Kendra, one of these days, your psychiatrist, she would use his name, is going to say, I can't be your doctor anymore. I want to be with you.
Oh my god. So she has an enabler friend too. Oh my fucking god. I think this might just be the result of like not having a good inner circle, because of like, if that's your best friend and she's like feeding into these illusions, maybe that's how we got here.
I want to be with you so bad. I can't be your doctor. I'll see you in 2 years. So
Oh,
my
no.
best friend, who's a doctor, she picks up on stuff like that. So even she knew that our relationship was crossing boundaries and getting weird, but that became my dream, was for
That, and here's the thing, like, again, I don't like using the word solutional in this case, because I feel like it only feeds into like the negativity that feeds, into this stuff, and I don't want this person getting harassed, but at the same time, it is kind of like the thing of like, they can't take any criticism for this, and they're trying to silence people from criticizing them. And the thing is, like, the reason why I feel comfortable using that term when it comes to her friend is because we've already seen how she explains this whole situation. So if you are able to like come to the same outcome that she is giving you from her explanation of being like, oh yeah, obviously this guy is very much in love with you for doing like something that every normal person does, then he's clearly in love with you. Then you might be a bit delusional. Because like, if what she said to us, if that was the same thing she told to her friend, how in the hell do you get that this guy is in love with her?
My psychiatrist, I almost use his name to do that. And I told him about Brianna saying that, my best friend, who's the emergency medical doc. I told him that she would tell me that, and he just
maybe also not bringing up your best friend's name into this. Yeah, like, even though like she's not saying that she did anything wrong, you're also kind of doxing your friend a bit. Don't bring up her name. Don't bring her into this.
And that was weaponized neutrality was his favorite game to play, right? He didn't disagree with Brianna telling me that my psychiatrist had feelings for me, but he also didn't say that's inappropriate. Let's change the subject. It was also around this time that I asked my psychiatrist.
Like, here's the thing. In that circumstance, that's definitely a moment where you should have just been like, okay, let's just, like, I'm gonna have to like end this, because it's definitely getting to a situation on your part where like it would just be inappropriate to continue this. Like, at that point, yeah, definitely he should have stepped in and been like, you're gonna need to go look for another psychiatrist. But on the other hand, I could also see that being the case of like him just feeling awkward about the entire thing, and also just being like, at the end of the day, I'm just here to try to help her. So as long as I just don't try to feed into this, maybe it'll just go away on its own. I could see that being the case, but like, that's like the only thing where it's very much like, that's something you could criticize him for. It's like not stopping it then and there. But like, again, with the information that we are given, he's not actively feeding into it, and this could just be the case of him just being like, well, I'm just trying to do my job, so I'm just gonna keep doing that and hope that this like attraction you have to me just goes away, because I've done nothing so far that should imply that I want to go any further.
If he had diagnosed me with anything other than ADHD when I had my initial diagnosis. And he said, yeah, I did. I said, oh, what did you diagnose me with? And he said, well, you had a lot of traumatic things happen to you in childhood because of your dad, and so I diagnosed you with other trauma and stressor related disorder. And that was the first little ping that I got of like, that was weird. Why would he keep that from me?
Now again, I'm not a expert by any chance, but it's not an exact science when someone is getting diagnosed. So usually you just kind of wait and play it out. You're not going to know exactly how to treat someone. You're not going to exactly know like what all is going on with them is. you're just going to have to figure it out over time. And maybe he just didn't think that as your sessions went on and as time went on, that he really needed to treat anything out. Like, I don't know, like, definitely there is a case of like, yeah, that is a bit weird, but again, like, when it comes to like psychiatry and stuff like that, it's not an exact science that you can just deal with right away. There's a lot of like testing things out. Not everything is going to be like 100% after the first session.
I asked Matt, like, why wouldn't he tell me that? That seems important. He didn't tell me because he was using that information to manipulate me. He knew I had trauma and stressor disorder, and instead of helping me heal from it and telling me about it, he used it against me.
Again, just trying to make this like I said, it's not an exact science. Just because you're diagnosed with something or stuff like that, it's a painful process. Maybe that was his initial diagnosis and he just wanted to wait it out and see. And maybe as time went on, he didn't seem like it needed to be treated or anything. I don't know. Again, it's a complicated system, but again, she always just paints it in the worst light possible.
January 2023, at this point, I was full-blown obsessed with my psychiatrist, and my therapist wasn't helping me, my psychiatrist wasn't helping me, he was feeding it. And then I got a boyfriend, and at first my psychiatrist wasn't really that keen, but then my psychiatrist realized that my boyfriend was a lot like my psychiatrist. And then I started talking to my psychiatrist about my sex life, about tracking my cycle, using the fertility awareness method. And my psychiatrist loved it. He didn't ever say, this isn't inappropriate to your care, let's pivot.
Actually, it is relative because your sex life is a part of your health. It is. It very much is, especially when you're using like medication for, like ADHD and shit like that. Like that does play a part into it. That's not unrelated. That's not at all unrelated. It's a part of your health regardless. That's why he also asked about like your bowels earlier on. Because it is a part, like when you're taking this medication, it's not just affecting, your brain. It can also affect your, a lot of your physical health. So like, obviously asking about like your sex life and stuff like that, or having you talk to him about this sort of stuff is not going to be uncommon and it's not unhelpful.
Oh, he just let me talk and talk and talk about my sex life. And I didn't get too deep, but about a year and a half in, and I would send my psychiatrist these emails just about how much I liked him and how I was so grateful for him, and put in a bunch of heart emojis. And this is really when he should have transferred my care, but he waited. He liked what I
Again, that is fair. I feel like at some point, this guy could have just been like, okay, this is getting too much. We're going to have to transfer it. There is a part of this where it's definitely like, yeah, if this is true, again, she hasn't really shown that she's that reliable of a narrator, but if this is the case, he should have stepped in and been like, you should see someone else, or I'll transfer you to somebody else.
Gave him too much. And so even though my boyfriend did not meet my needs, my psychiatrist and my therapist both were like, you have to stay with him. There's nothing wrong with him not meeting your needs. I'm like, okay. And my psychiatrist was like,
maybe you're the problem. Again, I don't want to be mean to this lady, but at the same time, it's just like, this is very obviously the case of like, you're just using this guy because he looks like your psychiatrist. And outside of the fact that like he's not meeting your needs, it's like, but you're using him because you want to get with your psychiatrist, but he doesn't want to get with you. If one person's more in the wrong, it's probably you because you're just using this person.
perfect, don't get wrong with him. And what was perfect about him was he wasn't meeting my needs. So I was still coming to my psychiatrist looking for emotional validation.
Oh my God, she's like, I voluntarily got with this guy because he looks like my psychiatrist, and then my psychiatrist, but it was really all part of my psychiatrist's master plan. Because instead of just getting with me, he wanted me to stay with someone who is exactly like him and not him.
Which he would drip to me slowly.
Again, this goes back to what I was saying beforehand. Just a part of like being in therapy or like seeking out mental health services, you have to understand you are not always going to be in the right. A part of like, getting mental help is realizing you're going to have to change quite a bit about yourself and realize that there are parts of you that need to be improved. Not in the sake of like, and in similar like situations like this, it's oftentimes why, like, I'm not saying this woman is as bad as like, someone who like manipulates others or abusers, but it's like, it's one of the dangers of like manipulators and abusers going into therapy is sometimes they will learn, like kind of like therapy speech, so like that. They'll learn that to help them control other people. This kind of feels the same way, only in the sake of like she's using therapy talk to try to manipulate people into thinking that she was a victim of this guy who was just doing his job.
So my therapist, who I didn't know at this time had bad boundaries, but she did. I went to her because my boyfriend and I, after like more than a year together, we started having issues in the bedroom. And so I went to my therapist and she asked me, "What does your psychiatrist think about this?" And I said, "I don't know. I haven't talked to my psychiatrist about this stuff because I have a crush on my psychiatrist and I don't want to tell him this intimate of stuff." And she said,
"But you already have." That's the thing. It's like, so have you been telling about this intimate stuff? If so, why aren't you telling your therapist that you haven't been? Again, it goes back to the whole unreliable thing. Also, like, didn't she say earlier that she already told her therapist that she had a crush on her psychiatrist? So why is this like new information?
"Well, you should tell him because I want a male's perspective." So at my next appointment with my psychiatrist, I told him, I said, "Today we're going to talk about my intimate life." And he said, "Oh." I said, "Yes. My psychologist, my therapist, asked what your opinion on it was. And I told her that I don't talk to you about this intimate stuff because I have a crush on you." And he looked down and smiled so big in that moment.
Yeah, it probably felt very awkward. That's something that someone would do in an awkward situation, is like try to avoid eye contact and just be like, "Oh, this is a bad situation. I should."
So big. And I loved it. It's so gross thinking about it. And then I proceeded to give him 30 minutes of non-stop content about my intimate life with my boyfriend.
And he was just jerking off the entire time. He just tore his pants off and he's like, "Keep going." I mean, that's kind of how she tries to paint all this stuff. Like, he's like this deviant. At least, like, that's what you kind of get from her tone about, like, how she speaks about him. But, like, again, none of the information will make someone come to the conclusion that this guy is a manipulator other than you just saying, "Oh, he was manipulating me." That's it. Like, just because you say, like, he was a manipulator multiple times does not mean that he is, when all of your examples does not back it up.
And I actually recorded the whole thing because I was so excited about it. But now it makes me sick. I can't even listen to the recording. I've tried to start, but it's gross. Any ethical psychiatrist would have stopped me and said, "Kendra, let's talk about your meds. Let's talk about your care."
Again, this is something where, like, yeah, he could have definitely stopped this, especially after you saying that, like, her saying that she had a crush on him. But at the same time, like I said beforehand, it's not irregular for someone like a psychiatrist who, like, is there to medicate you to wonder about your sex life, because the medications can definitely feed into that. Like, it's all part of your health. It's all connected. It's not individual parts. There's a reason why there are like antidepressants and stuff like that that can affect someone's sex life or their sex drive, because it's all connected. So yeah, it is important stuff, but again, there is parts in this where it's very much like the psychiatrist could have very much should have just stepped in and been like, this, we can't continue this because obviously you're like obsessed with me. And it makes me, just in the sake of like it being unprofessional, also like for this guy, I would also just be like, this feels very awkward and I don't want to deal with this anymore. So I'm going to transfer you to someone else who hopefully you don't get attached to.
At this point, my meds were stable. And I was still seeing him every month. Yeah, that was a rough time. And it was pretty much his Christmas morning.
Again, we don't get any information of like what happened after this, at least in this part. And we still have 3 more parts to go. And we're almost hitting an hour, Jesus Christ. Like, she did not tell us like what his actual response was to all this information that she dumped on him. So what am I supposed to think other than he was just like, okay, I think we're gonna call it a day, and just that's it? Like, again, he has done nothing so far to indicate that he is doing this purposefully.
2.5 years of grooming me to get me to talk about sexual things with him worked. And
yeah, this was all part of his master plan.
I need to address 3 things. 1, people are asking me what my mental health diagnosis is. I do not have BPD. I do not have sex. I have ADHD. And I was experiencing extreme limerence with my psychiatrist. Limerence is a normal thing to happen to anyone who is experiencing hot and cold behavior from someone. And it happens more often in people with ADHD because we have dopamine dysregulation and rejection sensitive dysphoria. And guess what? My psychiatrist knew that and used it to his advantage. 2, I accidentally said my psychiatrist's first name in one of my videos. If you clocked it, good for you. I do not owe him anonymity. However, this is not about doxing my psychiatrist.
Guys, I didn't dox my psychiatrist. I just said his first name and am not willing to take that part down, or like, take it down, re-upload it, and like censor out his name. Like, again, she's just being like, well, it's not my responsibility to protect his anonymity or something. Or like, oh, I don't owe him. You do. Again, like, I would understand in the fact of like, if this was someone who actually like abused her. But like, it's not. So you are going to feed this man, like, a lot of like hate is going to go to this man, and a lot of harassing is going to go to him because of your misunderstanding of the situation. Again, we're only really hearing her side of this. She could be right, but again, from the information we are given, she isn't exactly. She hasn't really given us a good example or good explanation of this guy is a predator.
This is about me sharing my story so other people can view predatory behavior in people in power. Okay? If anyone...
Remember, guys, it's predatory when someone notices that your hair is curly.
Doxes my psychiatrist with his last name or city that he works in or clinic that he works in, your comment will be immediately deleted and you will be blocked.
Okay, like that is a good way to police your community or the people in your comment section, but at the same time, that's not gonna... Again, this could have been all avoided if you just didn't give them his first name and try to help them, and essentially help them like round down who this person is. Because it's not like there's exactly a lot of like Pakistani psychiatrist men who have the same name as him, so it's probably would be super easy to find him, and this could just been all avoided if you just didn't mention his ethnicity, which felt like it didn't need to be there. Because it plays no part into the story so far, and his first name. You could have just left this stuff out. Again, it just feels like unnecessary. So yeah, it is kind of your responsibility to use that, especially if you don't if you didn't want people to know who this guy was, you didn't need to mention that stuff. Like, again, if you did want to, okay, again, he hasn't really done anything in the wrong so far, so that is still bad. But at the same time, it's like, it's just weird.
This is about protecting other victims, not doxing my psychiatrist. If you do some investigative work and you want to DM me about it, I'm open to that, okay?
No, fuck her. That's disgusting. That's irresponsible as fuck. There should be none. You should treat those people the same way you treat people in the comments. No, that's unacceptable. That is irresponsible.
3. I need to take a moment. Moment taken. It is so incredibly disturbing to me, the amount of people that are predator protectors in my comments, that are victim blaming me, especially the mental health practitioners in my comments using
all these people who specialize in mental health are telling me I'm in the wrong. How dare they? Obviously, they're in the wrongs. The people who know what they are talking about. Again, it's that understanding. Like, she obviously has not. A reason she probably has experienced a lot of couch time is maybe because she just can't accept the fact that she is wrong. Like, that's the thing. There are some people who are just like in denial about there being at least some part of them that could be wrong just because they've had a lot of stuff happen to them. Like, that's the thing. I understand that. Like, I feel like with some people, they can go through a lot of stuff, so they feel like the victim, which they are, if they can go through a lot of horrible stuff, like what she mentioned. But sometimes I feel like they can't get out of that space of, like, they're not always going to be the victim. Sometimes they can be the person who is doing someone wrong, like she is now. Like, it's kind of like the whole thing of, like, there, people who go through trauma can sometimes cause it to others and stuff like that. It's like a repeating factor. And I feel like it's from a point. Again, I'm not a mental health expert, so don't take anything I said seriously. Take it with a grain of salt. I feel like it's some people who just haven't come to terms with the fact that, like, they can also harm others just because they have gone through something. Just being in denial when they are being faced with other people telling them that they're in the wrong, especially people who know what they're talking about and are telling them that they're in the wrong. Like, these are people who know what they're saying, and you're looking at them and you're talking to them in this video and being like, no, you're in the wrong, person who spent their entire life dedicating to this, like, to mental health.
Therapy speak to say that this situation that I was in was my fault or that I was delusional. Check yourself. You're giving me more ammunition to share my story because it just goes to
again, like, her comment there doesn't help in the fact, like, this feels very anti-mental health. Like, this entire, like, video series just feels like it's just there to, like, target mental health services when it's just like, no, they're right. They might be harsh in their language. Again, I feel like she's just kind of, like, simplifying what they're saying. But, like, no, like, you are just not willing to admit that you read the situation wrong and are not willing to come to terms with the fact that you are in the wrong. So you're just kind of lashing out.
Show how absolutely messed up the mental health industry is and how protected people who do this kind of sick psychological manipulation are.
Like, that's not untrue. But again, there's also the dangerous part of, like, there are people who could go through, like, this industry and, like I said before, with, like, abusers and manipulators. Again, I don't think that that's her, like, 100%, but, like, it's the same behavior of, like, she's using therapy speak in all these videos and stuff like that. So, like, isn't she a part of the problem too?
So I will continue with my story tomorrow.
All right. We'll probably just leave it here. This is not as far as I wanted to get, but I didn't think it would be this long. But I think this is a good point to drop out from. But she's just not helping her case, is she? Like, she's very clearly not in the right. At least, or she's just not a good storyteller. That's the thing. Like, again, this could all be true, but again, the information we are being provided is coming from someone who has shown with their storytelling that they're not reliable. And again, even with the examples that they have given us of this psychiatrist being manipulative, none of it is like manipulative behavior. It's just like stuff that average person would do. And a lot of the stuff that she points on later on of him being manipulative, it just feels a lot of like her projecting her own feelings about the whole situation other than the actual facts. Because again, when she was like explaining like, oh, like I have a crush on you and this is all like the sexual problems I have with my boyfriend, she never tells us what he does after that. She just tells us that before that all happened, when she told him that she had a crush on him, he just looked down and smiled, which is like something that someone would do if they were nervous or just like uncomfortable about a certain situation. And again, there are situations in here where the psychiatrist could have very much just been like, hey, I need to transfer you to someone else. This is getting unprofessional. You're obviously getting obsessed with me and I don't think this is healthy. But at the same time, again, he's not doing anything that's furthering this obsession other than just being your psychiatrist. So yeah, we'll probably just leave it here. Hello everyone, thank you for watching today's video. If you would like to see other videos like this, please leave a like and subscribe down below. If you would like to hear me talk about a lot more nerdy subjects such as anime, comic books, video games, movies, and even pro wrestling, you can check out my second channel, The Fruit Basket. And if you would like to see me play video games, I have a channel called FruitySaur Gaming where you can check out those videos there. Anyways, that's all I have for today, and I'll see you all next time.